Hi, everybody. John Halda here, and I am super excited to have Jeff Mikan with me. Jeff is the CTO of EBO Pro, and we've gotten together today to talk a little bit about technology and how it's used in line haul contractors that we tend to work with. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you mind telling everybody a little bit about EBO Pro and your background?
Yep. Evo Pro is kind of a end-to-end solution for FedEx line haul contractors. Focus specific on them from scheduling to payroll to financial reporting. Kind of do an end-to-end, right, whole picture of your whole company. And then my background, I worked at AT&T for about 22 years in their wireless data branch. Over those years, I kind of gotten almost 200 patents. And then kind of out of that, I kind of retired from that. I kind of started Evo Pro in the background. And then as Evo Pro grew into a potential, I decided to kind of jump out of that AT&T ship and jump into my own boat.
Cool. And now you're stuck in the line haul world with the rest of us suffering.
Correct.
So Jeff, we talked a bit recently about technology and how we see a lot of contractors who are in the same boat in terms of the fact that they don't have a dedicated technology person, a dedicated nerd, if you will, like us on their staff because they're not big enough.
Well, I prefer geek because it's a double E.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't have it handy. I don't know what happened. My wife might have thrown it away, but I did have a propeller beanie, that I could spin when I'm geeking out. So, but yeah, I've only run into 2 or 3 contractors that are big enough to have a dedicated tech person. Have you bumped into many?
So now I consult for one that's about 100 routes. And I would argue even at 100 routes, they really don't necessarily need a full-time tech person. They probably need more of a part-time, about 10 to 20 hours. I mean, occasionally they need a full-time to kind of rejiggy their kind of path forward and to make some technical decisions. But for the most part, the day-to-day operations, they really just need a tech support guy. Right, managers need their own help, or office people need their own help. But for the most part, that tech support guy could be a remote. I mean, I remote into their desktops, spend 5 or 10 minutes, and fix it. That's not really a full-time support, but it is kind of it's a person that's on call to support the manager when they need help, but they don't need to be a full-time tech person.
Would you say the same thing to someone with 7 trucks?
I think you still need a tech reference, whether that could be your own kid, right? If they're tech savvy enough, it could be a neighbor, or it could be it's just a family friend that you can pull in occasionally. Now, obviously, it's on their time, not your time. But if you're kind of getting that service for free, or even taking them out to lunch occasionally, I think you'll find a lot of people that are willing to kind of do that barter system for you.
So for folks watching, Jeff and I were talking about what we might want to talk in this conversation and subsequent ones, because we're hoping to do this kind of regularly because there's a lot of different things that cover technology. We're going to use today's call to start with sort of more basic blocking and tackling things, because we even see contractors who don't get this right, and the core that we want to talk about is using technology for communications amongst your team, as well as taking advantage of cloud options. So before we jump in, just a caveat, and we're going to put Jeff and my contact info on the screen when we're done recording. But if anybody has any feedback on topics that they would want to see in subsequent videos, we're doing this for you. So please give us feedback, reach out to us individually or together, and let us know if there's things that you'd like us to talk about in a subsequent video. Fair?
Yep, agreed.
So communications. Jeff, as a geek, not a nerd, that's one of the things technology has been extremely good at. And we know about lots of things that your typical trucker may not know. They probably live in a phone, text, email kind of world. What are some of the things that you think they should be thinking about in terms of communications with their groups?
So from a manager point of view, I think the push for managers is really get them into that email. And I would recommend kind of a corporate email structure for managers or above, not necessarily the drivers, but the corporation. And the reason the push for a kind of your own domain name for managers and that type of stuff, it's the concern is more around a potential legal hold, right? You get that one payroll lawsuit that sucks you into a legal hold, and if your manager's using Gmail, there's no way to enforce that legal hold, and it can kind of put you in that hot water, right? And then also, if they leave your company, your drivers or anybody else is still emailing their old, right, their personal email,
Right.
and along with any password resets for OmniTrax or PeopleNet, right, will go directly to them and not come right into their business account where right it can kind of be eaten. So that's the first one, is to kind of get well, first of all, getting your managers on email, because there's going to be a big hurdle there to get that driver into a management role that actually looks at email. And then, right, because I want to be able to send attachments to them and that type of stuff. And then the other one is, right, to kind of bring it into a control environment. Now, back to that same thought about controlled environment, right? You're going, well, there's some IT setup fees, setup cost there. I think if you go find a right college kid, cousin and nephew, right, that is in the IT, they'd be kind of interested in setting that up and setting up, right, because it's a resume fodder for them.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely ways to do it on the cheap, but even if you don't want to do it on the cheap, I think you can find a tech person, and you're not talking about more than maybe 5-10 hours to get that set up. And if you have the gumption to setting up a managerial cloud environment, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's not that complicated to get email set up. If you have a domain, which is easy as pie at a place like GoDaddy to get a domain, they'll walk you through it, and you got your credit card out and it's only going to cost you 40-50 bucks or something like that. Once you have that, you can go to Microsoft and you can get Cloud Exchange, right?
Correct.
You can go to Google and get a G Suite account.
Yep.
And they make it so easy that you don't need to be techie to set these things up.
Correct. And for the most part, you can find a how-to by searching the web on, right, I have a domain, how do I set it up, or that type of stuff.
I know I set up a G Suite for someone recently. G Suite, for those who don't know, is Google's attempt to give you an Office IT group out of the box. So you go to gsuite.com, you say, I want to create an account. It says, do you have a domain? You say yes. It gives you the instructions, cookbook style, of what to do. And when you're all done, you've got Gmail for all your employees. You've got a central place to manage it that doesn't require any geek skills. You've got Google Sheets, you've got Google Drive, you've got Google Calendar, you've got all of these things that basically automate your office, at least the basic stuff. And I think it's between $5 and $10 a month per employee these days.
Yeah, I was poking around. It's right. It's at $6. The starter is $6 per user per month. And again, right, we're not talking getting your drivers into it. We're just talking getting your managers and above, right? Your drivers can keep their own personal emails. That's their personal. Pulling them or protecting the legal holds on them is not a concern. It's more of catching what your managers are doing, what your office is doing, and doing that side. Now, I come from the Microsoft background. Microsoft is the same price. I think they beat it by $5. And not $5, $1. So it's like $5 per user. But the standard for both of them is 12. So they're both at kind of 12 as their recommended solution. Microsoft gives all the online suites. I think, right, they give them Microsoft Teams, like Google gives their workspaces, kind of the online video chatting solutions. I mean, they're direct competitors, so they're kind of have a feature to feature product match.
So just to boil it down to specifics, let's say that you're somebody with 20 trucks and it's you, your spouse, and a bookkeeper type person who helps with payroll and a manager who's helping with scheduling, dispatching, 4 people. If you want the bare bones, you're talking 24, anywhere from 20 to 25 bucks a month. And if you want the full blown version, you're talking $48 a month for 4 people to be on the system.
Correct.
And a 20 truck operation's probably grossing, 4 million a year.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
If you're struggling with 48 bucks a month to basically have your baseline computer set up, you're not really prioritizing properly. Because as you said, if your payroll person is using richard@gmail.com as the email, and everybody in your company knows to contact richard@gmail.com, and they quit in a huff, well, every one of your drivers is still going to be emailing Richard and getting more and more mad at you when Richard is either replying with something you don't want Richard to say or ignoring their emails completely when their payroll's screwed up.
Correct.
Whereas if Richard had been on your company email and Richard's no longer with you, you redirect Richard's emails to you and you can field all the incoming stuff and not miss a beat.
Correct. And then also with both those, right, if you do want to do a online video call with your drivers, right, for a coaching session or whatever, right, you now have access to Google Meetings or Microsoft Teams that you can then pull in outside people, right, your drivers, and have a video call with them, right, to have that discussion if you need to have a coaching session and they're on a long team run.
Yep. And there are more tools out there for communications that are tailored to specific things. So like Jeff and I, in our tech background, we might have used something called Slack, for example, or ICQ or some other things. I don't think contractors need to go deep down that rabbit hole. I think things like Microsoft Teams and Google Meetup or Hangouts, those tools work great for what a typical contractor does, no?
Correct. No, agreed. The only concerns I have is because right, as the contractors grow, you start spinning off there is a group chat via text messages, and you're not getting legal holds on those type of group chats. Those get a little difficult if they're not in that team space or that meeting space for Google, right? You can't get that. That's a difficult scenario. But there's also some battles you fight with your managers and some battles you don't, right? I think you're better off to spend your time getting your managers into using email so they can receive that attachment versus trying just texting to them. And then as opposed to, right, fighting them to kind of do the chats in those online solutions, give them kind of, right, just kind of going down that email path.
But look, realistically, we all live in a litigious world where you never know when you're going to have a lawsuit. And yes, email is there and it's going to be recorded. There's some things you don't want to record it. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Chats might not
that would never happen.
No, certainly not in the trucking world. No. But for if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, why are you offering the baby stuff? I don't know exactly what Jeff uses internally. I've got a software company. I'm a bona fide nerd geek with a capital G or N, whatever you want to call it. Our company's using G Suite.
And we're using Microsoft Suite.
And it's absolutely perfect. And when we set it up, I sat down with 2 slices of pizza and a Coke, and I started clicking away to get a domain and to set up G Suite. And I hadn't finished 2 slices of pizza and the Coke before I was done with it. Now, your mileage may vary. I'm pretty good with tech, but this is something that you could get a 14-year-old who's good with computers to do for you in about half an hour.
Correct. I would say if you sat with them so they could ask you the questions, they could click through it, and you could give them a whole pizza and buy their labor.
Right. And now you've got email, you've got video conferencing, you've got cloud drive storage, you've got cloud-based spreadsheets, word processing, PowerPoints if you needed it for some reason, data, sort of like database in the form of different tools. all at your fingertips. And it's a few bucks a month. It's a
Correct.
no-brainer. And yet,
and it's all under your brand, right?
Right.
It's all under your brand with your domain name.
Yeah, I was trying to contact a contractor who sent me his email yesterday, and today I was looking it up, and I looked at the end of the email and I typed in that to see something about their business, which you might think would happen if you were a driver being recruited, right?
Correct.
But I put the end of their email in and it said domain name available. There was no website there. And I was like, seriously? Come on now. When you give out your email, like
Correct.
somebody's going to want to know about you. Why doesn't it take you to your website? Maybe they don't have a website, but even so, put something up there.
And just kind of wrapping that website scenario, right? So let's say I put $50 into my office suites for my group. I mean, putting out Squarespace website, it's another $20-$50 per month. I think it's even $20-$25 that you can have a nice looking website, either Squarespace or Wix or kind of any of these other. They're pre-made for like restaurants, and literally you can pick one of their templates that's a restaurant or a beauty salon, and you just kind of change the names and change the colors. And you can kind of get a decent website, right? Just to have that presence, right? So when that driver searches for it, that's what they find.
Right. And the nice thing is, take that young kid that you said, I'm going to put a pizza in front of you and we're going to set up my company. You could go straight from setting up Microsoft or Google straight into Wix or Squarespace, have them create the website because they've got the domain right there, have them pull a template down, change the picture of the happy person eating to a picture of a truck on the road.
Yeah.
Change the text to say, Dara, I'm going to guess at what the text for a contractor would be. We're hiring CDLs, and put the phone number and email right there. And at a minimum, you've at least got a web presence, and you can always come back to it later. And you haven't wasted a lot of money investing in it when you want to take it down 3 steps further to have some sort of online recruiting tool. Because what did it take you? 20 minutes and a couple slices of pizza.
Correct. Oh yeah, and just tack a form on. You can tack a form on that and have that form automatically email to you.
Microsoft Teams, I've played with it. I'm in love with it, but I'm a Google guy right now. One of the things I loved about it was that you can put the Microsoft Teams client on the driver's phone and you can blast text. So if you had a group of 10 drivers in a terminal, you can blast to all 10 of them and say, we've got an extra set of freight on Saturday. Does anybody want to work on Saturday? And if you're doing that with text messaging, if you're doing it on your phone, you're doing it the hard way. Like you should be using Google Voice or something else for SMS. But even so, you can start running afoul of SMS rates with blasting because you could get labeled as a spammer, but it doesn't happen in Microsoft Teams.
So on the ways to kind of optimize, before we kind of go into Teams, on the way to optimize the SMS, right? If you have an iPhone and using a Mac, right, you can do that via, I think a lot of that texting via your PC with iMessage. Another one is if you're using
hold on.
Yep.
You just threw a lot of jargon, and I
Fair
got
enough.
But explain that in non-tech.
For mobile devices, there are PC companion apps that allow you to send text messages from your phone or as if it's from your phone, but you have a full-fledged keyboard so you can sit at your computer or your laptop and type it in and send it. Now, Apple, you kind of have to pair it with a Mac. So if you have an Apple phone and a Mac computer, right, you can pair those through iMessage. And they actually, if you link them on your Apple account, they will kind of allow you to send those messages. If you have a Samsung phone and a Windows PC, there's a Your Phone app. And the Your Phone app works best with Samsung devices, but it also works across other Android devices. And it's called Your Phone on the PC, and then you have to install the Your Phone app on the Android device. And then the last one is Google. I can't remember what the website is because this is right from my own background of mobility data. Google actually has their Android messaging app. If you're on the Google Pixel phones, or you can install their Android messaging app on your phone, it kind of becomes your default messaging app. There's a web page that you can do everything from, right? Because they kind of tie their mobile device into the Google infrastructure, and they allow you to kind of, just like you'd send Gmail to multiple distribution lists, you can do it to multiple distribution lists via text.
Google Voice too. You can get a free
Yes.
phone number from Google Voice. Doesn't even have to be tied to a phone.
Correct.
And you can text from your computer with your keyboard, and the replies come back to your computer, and you can link it to your phone so you see and can send via your phone, but you don't even have to. But I do know that you can run afoul of Google Voice if you blast something to 50 drivers at once, even if it's your 50 drivers and it's a reminder
Right.
that the safety video has to be watched by Thursday. They might flag you as a spammer and put you in spam jail. And that's a really bad thing that can happen to you if you're texting.
Correct.
So yes, thank you for that. By the way, you mentioned an interesting point. Some people run into problems because they're Mac people versus Windows people.
Yes.
And it can be a lot easier if everybody in the office is Mac or everybody in the office is Windows, but oftentimes you got one person who's Mac, one person is at Windows. Does the Microsoft solution or the Google solution, or is there an Apple solution if you're all Mac? Does it matter what hardware you're on for those things?
So all those suites are targeted, right, for any device. So the
Okay.
Google and Microsoft target for any device. The Apple business stuff is more limited to just Apple devices. They really don't have a full offering for non-Apple devices. So there's an Apple business suite, I think it is, in Workspace, whatever you want to call it. But it's more tied directly to Apple devices and not kind of the larger infrastructure.
It is a shortcoming of Apple. I'm on a Windows, and if I want to share with you, Jeff, a Google Drive doc or a Microsoft OneDrive doc, I don't have to care what computer you're on. But
Correct.
if you happen to be on a Macintosh and you want to send me an iCloud doc, I'm kind of SOL in some respects. I mean, it'll work, but it's really clunky.
Yes.
Yeah. So just wanted to make that point for folks out there who may have a Mac or a Windows and they're trying to figure this stuff out. Microsoft and Google seem to be agnostic about what hardware they're running on these days.
Correct. Now, one thing you need to consider, and I'm not sure, is because you're using data and or text messaging to your drivers' phones, you need to consider if you should be doing a reimbursement to your drivers. Now that's up to up to what you and your state laws are saying. But I know they're already needing it to dispatch from FedEx and to acknowledge arrival into FedEx. But there might be some, because they're using their phone for business, you may need to look into local regulations for that.
Yeah, and also talk to your accountant about the tax deductibility of
Correct.
it. It's a shared phone that they have, personal and all.
Correct.
And I do know that reimbursing phones is a royal pain in the butt.
The one client I have that does it, they just flat rate, they say $30 every month.
Yeah, I've seen $5 a week. I've seen $30 a
Yeah.
month, that kind of thing. At the same time, you could also tell your drivers, I'm just bumping you a penny and they're happy.
Correct.
Before we get to cloud storage, which is an important topic, what are your thoughts on phone systems?
What do you mean by phone systems?
Well,
Like the desk phones?
I think the world has moved away from desk phones. I think if you're a contractor, you need to be able to get your calls no matter where you are. So everybody tends to carry their cell phone. But I hate the fact that if you train all your drivers, hey, if you've got a maintenance issue, call Frank, right?
Correct.
And Frank quits. And they've been calling Frank's phone number.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a whole big challenge to get people retrained to not call Frank, right?
Correct.
And there are some neat solutions out there. I'm personally fond of Grasshopper. Have you worked with that?
I have seen Grasshopper. I have seen and I have worked with Ring Central. And I think there's some things that work better on Grasshopper than Ring Central and vice versa.
Yep, agreed. But for folks who don't know, you can literally get a cloud-based phone system that doesn't involve any equipment, any wiring, anything you have to do in your office or wherever, but it gives you the sense that you're a big company. So I'll walk through a Grasshopper example and you walk through a Ring Central one. I set up for a contractor friend of mine a phone number that is their main office number in Grasshopper. And so when people call that number, I transferred their actual main number to it. It then gives them a, hey, press 1 if you're a driver looking for work. Press 2 if you're a FedEx terminal manager looking for a BC with an issue. Press 3 for anything else or whatever. Depending on what they press, it then forwards the call to one or more phone numbers that we've set up. And those are the people's cell phone numbers. So if it's a driver, it might go to person 1, 2, or 3, and you have the flexibility to say, ring all 3 at once until someone picks up, or try this person a couple times. And if they don't pick up, try that person, etc. And the neat thing is you can set it up to say, look, if it's an incoming recruiting call, Frank is working during the day, but Martha is working at night. So a call coming in at 2 a.m. from a driver working at night, if it's between this hour and this hour, direct it straight to Martha's phone number, but don't bother her during the day because she's sleeping. If it's during the day, send it to Frank's phone. So you have all this control. And if Martha wakes up one day and says, I'm done with you, well, you don't have to redo your marketing material. It's all coming into this phone number, and you just replace Martha on the call tree. And that's really nice.
Yeah, we did this. We did. Now, the problem I have with Ring Central is they don't have an auto time-based solution. So they don't look at the only forward to Martha at night. So the Ring Central one I implemented was a safety line, right? So, hey, you get an accident, call the safety line. And it allows them to automatically direct to the managers of their area, right? Press one for the corporate. And it would automatically ring the corporate guy. If he's unavailable, kind of would trickle down behind him. And we even kind of had to go and dig on the logs to make sure that, hey, what happened, right, in a troubleshooting event where, right, it was a bad accident and right, the driver was so panicky, he didn't even navigate the tree. So the recommendation is, like if you're doing a safety line, is if they're navigating a tree, just have it keep ringing. Don't give up after 10 rings or whatever. Because if they're in a panic situation, they're not listening to the call tree. Just an FYI if you're doing it for a safety line.
By the way, you're right about Grasshopper not being able to set up the schedules until about 8-10 months ago. They finally
No. I'm saying they could. Ring Central couldn't.
Oh, Ring Central couldn't.
Okay. Well, when I looked at it probably a year ago, they could not.
Okay, yeah. That was one of the features I love for Grasshopper is that
Correct.
You can set up calls that if they come in a certain time, the nighttime person gets it versus the other person, because people were getting so mad before that because they were getting called all night when they were sleeping or vice versa. They're like, you got to make it stop. And so you set it up with a schedule. And for folks who aren't aware, that whole phone system for that contractor is about $50 a month. That's it. And they've got 2 or 3 dedicated regional manager numbers. So you can call direct to the regional manager number, and it's not their cell phone. You're calling a permanent number that forwards to their cell phone. And if they're on vacation or something, it goes to the owner. And then they've also got a dedicated safety number, plus the call tree can get you there, all for like $50. I mean, I think they have like 6 phone numbers and 18 extensions. So it's very cost effective. The downside is when you want to call with a question, there ain't nobody listening in support.
Yes.
On your own with their help docs, and call your friendly geek like me type thing to help set it up.
The problem I had with Ring Central was I opted in for like a conference call package just to get an audio conference bridge up and running for a couple months. And then in order to disable it, you had to physically call up their tech support, right? There was no online disable. You could online add, but you couldn't online disable.
Yeah, I've heard some things about Ring Central, and it's not cheap, Ring Central.
Correct.
But it's a good service. I mean, people who use it like it. The other thing that's really interesting, which I haven't heard anybody trying, but I'm dying to hear if somebody does, Grasshopper is partnered with a company called Ruby. So for about $100 a month, you can actually have all your calls answered by a live person, as if you had a receptionist 24/7, and they can ask questions and route the call according to a script that you design. So you pay a flat rate, plus you pay a few cents or something per minute for the call time that the person's answering the call. So it could be a neat option for contractors who want to have someone answer the phone 24/7 if they're doing recruiting and someone calls in the middle of the night saying, "I just saw your ad."
Correct. Yeah, that sounds cool.
But anyway, phones is so old world, but it's still critical to a lot of folks. I wanted to mention that. Anything else on phones?
I think that's it.
Cloud storage. Thoughts on that?
So if you kind of took the earlier suggestion of the Google or Microsoft solution and you kind of stepped up to that, that automatically has a cloud storage piece into it. If you're kind of doing some other cloud storage solutions outside of that, outside of Google or Microsoft or that suite package that package that we kind of mentioned earlier, you have to look at you have to weigh the benefits of that cost outside of that package. I know that the Microsoft one gives you 1 terabyte of storage per person. I think Google's probably gives you about the same. You know how much storage it gives you?
I don't, but if any of these folks listening are using up 1 terabyte of storage,
unless you're doing 4K videos and editing them, you're not using up 4K. You're not using up the 1 terabyte of storage.
There's nothing in a line haul trucking operation
Correct.
that should be worried about the cost of storage. I am a full-on hardcore tech nerd that does a lot of stuff, and I had to pay up for Google extra storage, and I think I have 400 gigs or something, and I pay $10 a month for that.
So just to get a ballpark for you guys, there's one team, so probably there's 3 managers kind of covering probably 30 to 40 routes, and they're using 16 gigs. So nothing near combined. So nothing near 1 terabyte for a single person. And that's right. That translates to a lot of storage. Now, the benefits of these cloud storage is one is multi-device, right? As I put stuff up there, I get stuff off my local PC. It's still available on my local PC, but I can also pull it from my phone when I'm out and about, or I pull it from the laptop when I'm out and about, or your tablet, right? So the idea here is that whole Excel spreadsheet of, oh, I have to do it when I get home. Well, now while you're waiting in the doctor's office, you can go putz around and clean it up, or waiting for that water pump to be right, put on the truck, right? You can kind of do some of those office tasks while you're out and about. The other one, go ahead.
I was just going to interject and give the folks listening a couple acid tests that should really worry you if you're doing them. If you could answer yes to the following question, you need to be looking at cloud storage immediately. If one or more of your computers were to suddenly get doused with water or get burnt up in a fire, and you lost that computer and it couldn't be recovered, if your business would be impacted detrimentally, you need to go to cloud storage immediately. Because if you're storing it all on a specific hard drive somewhere and that thing got lost, stolen, damaged, whatever, and that screwed up your business, you need to fix that tomorrow.
Correct.
Secondly, if you're still doing tape backups or zip drive backups or worrying about weekly backups, you need to go to cloud storage tomorrow and stop that crap. It's a royal waste of time and money, correct?
Yes, agreed.
If you find yourself saying via email, will you send me a copy of the file? I need to edit it. Getting the file, editing it, and then sending it back to the other person so they have the copy, because no two people can edit it at once. You need to be going to cloud storage.
Agreed.
Okay. If any of those questions were true for you, you need to be looking at this immediately, because you are making your life so much more difficult than it need be. And you have so much more risk in your business than you should. And cloud storage makes all of that go away.
Let me throw another one in there, right? If you're clicking on some weird websites, if you have caught yourself going down the wrong phishing email, or right, you found yourself, hey, I clicked on this to go change my password, and whoa, what am I doing? Right? Those are the websites that will route you to ransomware. And these cloud storage solutions have a backup solution to avoid the ransomware. Right? They have a stopgap to say, if it's been modified in the last 30 days, it actually keeps all the old histories. And I'm not sure if it's limited to 30 days or more, but it keeps the old history. So if ransomware comes in there, deletes it all, encrypts it all, they actually have easy buttons to kind of recover it.
Yeah, when you hear about ransomware, it's never about someone's Microsoft or Google Cloud account that just got ransomware. It's their local PC.
Correct.
And ideally, if this happens to you, you either buy a new PC or go to the Geek Squad or get out your operating system and reinstall from scratch. And then you connect to the cloud and everything's exactly where you left it. No harm, no foul.
Correct. And actually, probably your PC will run faster because you got rid of some of the old software on there.
Right. Yep. And I interrupted you before. You were talking about cloud storage and you were on a good track. I just wanted to cover those red flags so that people know what they should be thinking about.
No, I was just going into the ransomware. So, right, you get, by going to cloud storage, you kind of get free backup, free anti-malware stuff,
free versioning,
and free remote access. So you can access it from any of your devices at any time. You can collaborate, like you said, on any of it. Good.
I think free backups, everyone should know what that means. The system's just automatically making backups. It's not like there's a single hard drive at Google, and if that one breaks, you've lost your files. Yes. They are intelligently making copies and whatnot. You're not at a risk of failure there. Free versioning is an interesting one. If you've ever had a master Excel file where you're keeping track of all your drivers or all your trucks, and you hire someone new and they screw something up and change a bunch of things and hit save, and you're like, oh my God, where did all the work go? Well, versioning means you can go point at the file in the cloud and say, can I see what the file looked like 2 days ago before that person made their error? And it can go back, or a week ago before that was changed, or 2 weeks ago. It's all baked into the way the cloud works. You can go back in time and look at what the file looks like and say, give me a copy of that version. That is really cool when you have a screw up.
Yes, I have pulled that up for many clients to kind of roll back to, and a lot of times you get those, the file gets corrupted and you don't realize it for a week or so. So that's where it's beneficial to go back 2 weeks to go find a clean copy, pull it forward, and then you kind of look at your edits.
Yep. And the remote access, that's phenomenal.
Correct.
People think it's black magic, but you've got your computer at home, you finally unplugged, you've gone on a vacation with your spouse, and you're at the beach and you get a frantic call that something's missing. How do I do this? And you can literally go to the business center at the hotel with no computer and get onto the cloud, log in and see all the files. Or if you've got your phone with you, you can usually pull it up there if you don't need a big screen and get it right from your phone.
And just so you guys know, right, cloud storage, once you install the software, all it does is it looks like another USB drive attached to your computer, right? It has the same, it just looks like another drive out there on your file explorer, and you can kind of open it up as a folder and drag stuff to it and copy stuff back and forth out of it. And I think Google and Microsoft kind of allow it to auto save stuff. So if you're offline, you can kind of have a copy of it offline set up so it's automatically offline, right? You're out at the gravel lot that has no coverage. You can edit that Excel or that Google Sheets, right? You change that edit, you come back, you go home, you power up your laptop in the Wi-Fi, and automatically transmits up to the cloud and kind of merges those changes into the system, right? So it has a lot of that offline synchronization already built in, right? And again, the big bonus here is, right, they built these systems for the megacorps. So they have all the bells and whistles in it, and you're riding on the coattails of the megacorps.
But even something that'll sound simple to you, Jeff, I know contractors who, when they see it for the first time, their mind is kind of blown because I spoke to one contractor who was in the habit of asking their manager every morning to send an Excel with today's schedule on it. What trucks are going where with what drivers, right? Yep. Everybody's used to this. And if it changes, send me an updated Excel so I have the latest.
Okay? Correct.
And I went into, in this case, Google Drive, and you can do the same thing with Microsoft. I set up a spreadsheet on Google Sheets for today's schedule, shared it to his phone. He's got an icon that says today's schedule. And when his manager is in the office editing it, it's just updating on his screen. Literally in real time as the manager's typing, the changes are reflected. So there's no more get the email, it's changed, make sure you open the latest one. You just click the phone and look, and it's the spreadsheet live as things are changing.
Right. And we've done that as opposed to kind of over the shoulder, right? So you're not hovering over somebody while they're editing the schedule or whatever. You bring up the schedule on one computer and you're talking to them over the phone on their laptop at home, and you're both editing the same schedule at the same time.
Well, that's the fun part for this person because they were already ecstatic that they could see a change in real time. But when they realized they could click on something and type next to it, WTF, I thought he's on vacation this week. Are you paying attention? And it's showing up on the other person's screen at the same time. Then they were in bliss.
Correct.
But some folks haven't seen that. Some folks are still emailing files back and forth for some reason.
I do have to admit, I get lazy and I email files sometimes versus sending me the link, but we all fall back to old habits.
I'm trying to think of other basic things that from a cloud standpoint, it's just a no-brainer to take advantage of that kind of stuff. Anything jump to mind?
The only one I want to put a warning on is around Dropbox. So Dropbox is a common cloud storage solution out there. I think it's an easy one to get into from a consumer point of view. The warning I will put out there is if you get sucked into a litigation, there's not an easy way to get them to put a hold on it. They kind of have to blow away your license and come and create a new license for you. So I'm throwing that out as a weird gotcha before you kind of pick Dropbox as your solution.
I'll pile on, but for different reasons. I have found that Dropbox, because it was born in the notion of syncing local files back and forth, I've no longer, I have a Dropbox account, but I don't put anything in there that I consider important. because I hate it when you make an update somewhere and the other PC hasn't changed. And then you end up with something like sync conflicts in 2 copies and you're trying to figure out which one was the right one. I don't go there.
Fair enough.
In fact, for that reason, I don't use those little plugins from Google or Microsoft that sync it to your local hard drive. I just use the cloud drive.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
The syncing down to the local hard drive, it's like an umbilical cord back to the old days, and it's not worth the pain.
I would agree for you and I who are feet from a Wi-Fi hub 99% of the day. But for the people that kind of go out to the gravel lot, right, that have little to no cell coverage out there, or right, the cell coverage is so painful, it's painful to browse any page.
Fair point. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, there are, when you move into that synchronization, you can occasionally get a duplicate file that you pops out there, and you just have to kind of figure out what the changes were between those. But I think that's a toss up whether, right, it's 6 to 1, half a dozen the other.
The other thing that's phenomenal about cloud storage, and this is going to sound really nerdy, but it's actually something you need to think about, is disaster recovery. And most small businesses don't think about this. A disaster recovery might be as simple of, you've got an office with 5 people who work in your office, and all your computers are there, and you have a fire, and it's a total loss. And it may not be a total loss because the building burnt down. It may be a total loss because the sprinkler system kicked in and soaked everything. But when you have that set up that way with the cloud, it's no problem. You just go down to the local Best Buy, get a computer, plug it in, and connect to your cloud account, and it's like you never left.
Correct.
Or maybe your office is intact, but the internet's down because some fool with a backhoe took out the Comcast internet line, and you've been told it's 4 days till they're going to fix it, and you've got trucks on the road. Well, you drive somewhere with a coffee shop where you can get Wi-Fi and everything's in the cloud, you're still in business, right? Correct. Or there's an area-wide blackout because of a hurricane. Not a big deal. Go find power or a generator and a 4G signal, and you're back in business. But most small businesses don't think in terms of disaster recovery, but the cloud stuff makes it so easy to run your business from wherever.
Well, we have enough managers that are climbing in and out of trucks. How many times that laptop slip out of the truck and hit the ground? I have known at least one manager that has driven over his own laptop, and he kept using it, but right, luckily at least the hard drive didn't die. But that I've also set up remote backup so that he doesn't even have to think about it. It automatically backs up his hard drive to the cloud. Even if he doesn't use the cloud function, it's automatically backing his stuff up to the cloud.
And look, if you want to talk dollars and cents, so this is a little nerdy, or geeky, sorry. There were 2 schools of thought many years ago about phones. Apple came from the school of thought that they wanted the phone to be a really, really smart device in your hand, an expensive, complicated device, talking to a really dumb computer in the cloud that just gave it data when it was asked for. Google had the other approach of they wanted to have a really dumb piece of glass in your hand, talking to a really smart computer in the background. And it's kind of evolved to something in between on the two, but the cloud from a standpoint of computers for your office really opens the door for you to save a lot of money, because today you can go on Amazon and you can buy a micro PC for about $150, I think, that allows you to plug a keyboard, mouse, and monitor to it. And it's a Windows computer, but it doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but you don't need a lot of horsepower because everything's in the cloud. You're just using the browser for the most part. I know you're about to put an asterisk. You're about to put an asterisk on that.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Go and finish your thought.
Well, if you go back 5 or 10 years ago, though, you might have been looking at spending $1,000, $1,200 on a PC with enough memory to do all the different apps that you needed to run for accounting and for this and for that. So many things are moving to the cloud that it's moving closer and closer where you can really, for certain staff members, buy a very cheap PC.
Right. So I wouldn't go to the $150, $200 one. So my recommendations around PCs is from an office manager point of view, for the most part, if you're just doing emails, web browsing, and light Excel office stuff, you really need kind of the i3. So it's kind of the entry to PC world. It's called, there's an i3, there's an i5, i7, i9. So i3 is kind of that starting piece for a Windows PC. Maybe executives, you may bump up to an i5 just so they don't complain. Not that they need it, but they just wait for Office less.
Depending on the executive, there's some that you might do better with an etch a sketch.
Fair enough. If you're not kind of if you're not in kind of the graphics world or programming world, and you don't plan to do any of that type of work, I definitely say you don't need the i7, right? Don't spend the money for the i7. You're hitting at the i3, i5. My recommendations normally is to go to Costco or Sam's, right? The equivalent, and look for the $500 to $600 laptop. And I think right now they bumped up to like $700. It's for the same laptop, it's just supply constraints. And look for the ones that's the portability that you want, kind of the screen size portability. If it has number pad or not, right? So depending on if it's an accountant or not, they will beat you about the head if you don't give them a number pad on the right. And that's kind of that numbers on the right hand side of the keyboards.
Fair disclosure, Jeff's wife is an accountant.
Yes. And that is a key requirement for any laptop I buy her, is a number pad on it. She's also a large screen. She'll give up the portability over the large screen and the number pad. On the flip side, right, I know you have managers I'd rather have the 13-inch. I will deal without the number pad, but kind of make it easy, portable, right? That easily pops in the backpack and I can haul it around.
And being able to drive two monitors is such a nice thing in this day and age.
Yes.
It really makes a difference. So if you can make sure that whatever computer you're buying, whether desktop or laptop, allows you to have two monitors side by side that work seamlessly together.
Correct. Now, I'd recommend, if you're buying one now, get a USB-C port. Ideally, it charges off USB-C.
Yep.
Has a USB-C charger, not a proprietary, moves away. So the USB-C is the Windows view of the Lightning cable. It's kind of the inverse of the Lightning cable that Apple has for their phones. It can be inserted upside down, left, right, and center, and it always plugs in the right. And they've actually moved it. A lot of laptops have moved it to that as the power cord, and it makes it so much easier because then I can actually share a desk with somebody else, and I can plug my laptop into that power cord that's left on the desk, and I don't have to go fumble and plug it underneath the desk, right? You kind of hot swap your spaces, or I can even hot swap it with kids or your spouse, and you can kind of leave a power cord at the couch that everybody could use.
So I'm looking at the clock, Jeff. We've been rambling on for a while. Does this sound like fair takeaways for folks who have watched this long for the basics?
Yep.
If you're not using a cloud solution, whether it be Microsoft or Google or something else of your choice for storage and productivity software and communications, you need to be doing that right away. It shouldn't be more than about $5 to $10 a user per month, give or take. And you need to take advantage of that today.
Yep.
Right?
Agreed.
You shouldn't have to spend a lot of money on computer hardware these days. Printers and Wi-Fi and computers and laptops, they're very inexpensive, and you don't need to have super 32 gig fancy desktops to do anything we're talking about.
Correct.
And you don't have to bring your drivers onto these platforms because they're just like talking to a customer. They don't have to be paying for it for them to be able to do Google Meets and Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams and those things. They're just add-ons later, right?
Agreed.
And having a basic web presence is a no-brainer. If you're not doing it, it's because you literally can't spend half an hour to an hour for your business to have a place on the web.
Correct. And then the only other one I would say is spend a little time to go find a tech consultant, whether that's a teenager in your extended family, maybe even if you have somebody that's a teacher, and maybe they can go to the local high school and get somebody out of that school, right, and get a computer science teacher to recommend somebody, and bring them on. They get you're helping them because they're getting work experience to go get that right, either into college or their next job, and they're learning on the way. They're going to be very motivated to help you out, and that comes at a rather low price to you guys, right? To kind of even pay them, and you're getting a good return on your investment.
Yep. And to the detriment of all the other techies who are going to be asked to help, we're the type of people who love showing off how much we know. We love hearing, oh my God, that's so cool. How did you learn that? You're so bright. And we'll often give away our help for that kind of stroking because nobody else wants to talk to us. And we'll often work for food.
Yes.
So seriously, if you're a contractor and you don't have that, like Jeff said, I think that's the best suggestion for anybody. Find a teacher, find a school administrator, say, who's in charge of the computer lab or the computer program in the high school? And are there some bright kids who would occasionally want to come work for $15 an hour, come to our office and set equipment up and give us their advice and do things? And you'd be amazed the amount of talent you're going to get for very low cost. And you don't need to be paying a high price IT consulting firm for any of this.
Correct.
And if you're willing to have a little bit of get up and go, you could probably do it all in an evening yourself if you're just willing to read some screens.
Yes, agreed.
Jeff, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I had a ball talking to you. I know that this was very introductory. If there were folks looking for deep dive stuff, we're going to do that. Jeff and I have a whole list of things we want to talk about over time. But again, this is a service that we are providing to folks to try to just share knowledge. If anybody has questions, we'd love to tackle those. Otherwise, we're just sort of talking in the air and not knowing who's listening. So please get in touch with us. Our contact info is going to be here. Right, Jeff?
Yep, agreed.
For those who aren't aware, there's a FedEx line haul contractor Facebook group just for line haul folks. We're going to put the link on the screen here. Jeff's on that. I'm on that. You can absolutely get in touch with us that way if you don't want to call or email us with questions. And if you put them publicly, we'll answer them publicly. Right, Jeff?
Correct. And I think that may be a best way to help other people is you've put it out there, right? You'll get both of our feedbacks and kind of start that discussion.
Yep. And Jeff and I are both going to be in Dallas at the Line Haul Summit in July. So if you're not aware of that, we're putting the link there. You should absolutely be attending it. I don't even think we've made the agenda of topics to talk about at this point because there's so much good stuff people are going to be learning about. But Jeff and I may be doing a tech presentation if there's demand for it with Q&A. So if that's something you'd want to see, let us know, and we'll try to get the organizers to put it on the agenda. And once again, Jeff, Evo Pro, phenomenal software. If you haven't taken a look, you should be looking. And we're Haldy Tech.
Right. So equally phenomenal software, kind of just different focuses between us.
Yep. And Jeff and I actually are very close physically to each other in Atlanta. We meet often, and we're always looking for feedback on how to improve what we do for you guys, the customers. So thank you, everybody. If you've made it this far, cannot thank you enough for your patience, and we hope it was valuable to you. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody.